Okay, so I got the carrier pulled apart and I inspected all the pieces, called around and looked around and found different bearings and everything that I needed. Come to find out that a Ford 8.8 differential carrier has the same size bearings as the 8.875 12 bolt, and the pinion is also the same bearing. So I had mentioned in my other video that I had rebuilt a 8.8 recently and I had leftover bearings that I ended up not using or bought doubles of, I can't remember. But they were in my storage and they actually happen to be the same size as the carrier. So I figure while I have it apart, I'm just gonna go ahead and change them because I got the bearings and no big deal. I also, the spring tension preload for the clutch packs, this originally is a 200-pound spring that came with this car. GM makes a 200, a 400, and an 800-pound spring. The 200 being a lightweight one, that what it does is it doesn't put all that much load on the axles, so when you go around a corner, it breaks loose fairly easy. The 800-pound, which is the heaviest one, is extremely hard, and what it'll do is going around corners, it'll chatter a lot and kind of clunk, and it's made mainly for racing, not much for the street. What I did was I went with the 400, which is in between. You can kind of see the difference between the springs themselves. Let me get it up a little bit closer. The 200-pound springs, are a different size, a little less pressure. This is going to have more pressure, so that'll work. Have to find where the other spring went. I also got the clutch packs in here. I got them soaking in oil, the Kevlar, so that way they'll, when I put it together, it won't be dry and destroy the material. So I got my bearings, I got my pinion bearing, got the ring and pinion that I'm going to use. Also bought a new set of bolts for the ring gear, and then of course all the different shims I'm going to need to set up, but that'll come on later. Also, I found, this was a question for me, on the spider gears, I found replacement, what this is called is a thrust washer. This is actually called a pinion thrust washer, not to be confused with the pinion that drives the ring gear, but this is also a pinion. So the pinion thrust washer is what I ordered, and so I have those as well. So this should actually come out pretty good. All new bearings, new clutch pack, new bushings and everything, so this should work out pretty well. So we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start assembling the clutch packs. So what we'll do is take a side gear. Actually, you can take both of the side gears. You take I separated them out. I have 6 of these clutches, so 3 on each side, and then I have 4 of these for each side, so 8 total of every other one. So you'll start off with the steel first. The steel goes down, and what this does actually is this will lock into the case. When it sets in there, there's corresponding tabs or divots in here that this will set in, and this will grab a hold of the case, the carrier. Then the side gears are splined, and so are the clutch discs. So those will go together here like that, and what you'll have is with the pressure, it locks everything together. These lock into that locks into that. So what we'll do is we'll put the first side gear, we'll do a plate on each one, then we'll do a clutch disc on each one. Then we'll do a steel plate on each one. Then we'll do a clutch disc on each one. Another steel plate, another clutch disc, and another steel plate. Then, once these are together, I guess I can get rid of that oily rag. Once these are together, then you have the clip here. Hopefully you can see it all good on the camera. I had to move it back so we can get everything in here in the shot. Those will clip onto either side, like that, and then they go in there. But we also have some shims here too, that we could use to set it up. We'll throw a couple of thick ones in there, see what happens. So those will go, actually those will go, first we'll put our guy in there. This on top. And manipulate it into the carrier. That side in. And we will do the same thing to the other side. Let gravity do its work here. All right, so the other clutch pack was giving me a little bit of a hard time, so I decided to shut off the camera and grab a little bit of grease and put a little bit of grease in these retaining clips here. Kind of help hold them in place a little bit. I don't have to fight it so much. Sure everything gets lined up. You know, when it comes to this, there's no need to be in a hurry. You know, like I had said in my other video, I don't work on other people's cars. I just do my own here. So if it takes me a while to get things put together, you know, I'm not on the clock. You know, any time that I spend out here is just personal time, and it's therapeutic. So, no need to be in a hurry, nothing to stress about. So there we go. Now that fits. Now we got both of them up in their clips at the same time. What I'll do is I'll take one of the spider gears and put in there to kind of hold everything into place. The back one won't fit in there. So now, and we'll put it over here. Okay, that kind of holds everything together. Now that I have it sitting in my axle in the vise, I could roll this around until I can roll it around and get the gear, that one spider gear, to the back. I haven't put the shims in yet, or the thrust washers in yet. I'll get those in a minute. Just trying to get all of these guys, get these guys in here. Now what we need to do is have these, when we assemble them in there, directly across from one another. And it appears like they are. So best way to tell is to put our cross pin. This is the one that retains it actually goes through the sides here. And I guess we can go ahead and do that. Let's just go ahead and see if they line up side to side. That one does. You know, and I have an axle in my way, so pull that up a little bit. It looks like I have them in. Yes, so we have it now pulled off. Everything is back into place. Need to reposition this axle. I got it sitting up a little bit too high. Get her down a little bit and lock it down. Okay. Yeah, that's better. So what we're going to do, guess I should put those shims in. So we'll go ahead and pull this back apart again. Pull the pin back out. And kind of hard to see, but as we got it coming back around, the spider gear comes back out. I could slip that shim in there, and that will hold that guy in somewhat. So we get the other guy to come out a little bit. Put that shim in, and then bring them back around. All right, and what we're really doing here is we're just trying to feel for the amount of pressure, because, you know, like I said, we have shims to put into the side gear, and we want to put somewhat of a preload on there. We don't want it to be super easy to churn, and we don't want it to be difficult either, or too difficult. So that thing does not want to go in there. Oh, that's why that shims. Like I said, a little bit of patience. There we go. So moving this around by hand, I would say that's a little bit loose, because, you know, everything's going to kind of break in and wear in and all that. So I'm going to go ahead and move the axle down a little bit more. All right. And I think I could pull that all back apart and stick a couple more shims in there and see if we can tighten it up. So everything back apart. Like I said, this is where patience is really can really be a virtue here. The important thing is you take your time. You take your time here. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put a couple more, or another shim in here. So I'll shut this off, get another shim in there, and we'll go from there. Okay, so what I did is I took it back apart. I had the one shim that I started with, and then from my pack of shims here, they're all of varying thicknesses. I didn't measure them or anything. I'm gonna go all by the feel. Kind of want it to be tight, but not too tight. So I got the thick shim, and then I got one of the thinner ones, and I put one on each side. So we'll go back into it again. Clutch pack in, side gear and clutch pack assembly in. Flip it over, make sure it's seated, because that makes a big difference in getting this other side in. If it's not seated in there, it's not enough room to get the other side in. So again, a little bit of patience. Got that in. Now that side. I'll stick a gear in there as a placeholder. Put it back up here on the axle. Spin it around until I get that gear in the back position. And I can pull that off so we can see it. I'm getting I don't know if you can see it from that angle, but I'm getting the gear, the one spider gear, to the other side of the case, so that way I could put this in. I'm gonna eyeball it and make sure it looks straight. It does. See if we could make sure they line up onto their side holes again. Looks like they do. All right, I'll pull it back out, put the shim in one side. It already feels way tighter. The other shim in. Like that. Move the case back. just reaching in the hole here and lining up the thrust washer, just kind of getting in there and just pushing it with my finger. It feels like if you were to have your finger in there and give this thing and crank this thing with that, especially with that thrust washer there, boy, that would be, you'd end up with a boo-boo on your finger. So, all right. That side's in. See what it is. It's a little gentle. Yeah, I think that's right. Now when you move it, it's pretty tight. So one of the things that you're supposed to do is give these guys a bunch of turns and kind of get everything seated in there pretty good. See how it feels. You don't want it real loose. And and I'm not putting a whole bunch of strength into moving this, but enough. Again, this is going to be a street car that I'm going to drive all the time, so I don't want it to be too loose because then it'll wear out the clutches too soon, and I don't want it too tight because I don't want it to chatter and hop around and all that. So I feel good about that. I'm pretty happy with how that's going, how that all feels. Okay, so now we're going to put in the spring pack and plate that will apply the tension to the two sides here. So what I did was I took the assembly. They've got holes in them. I had zip tied them earlier to hold them together when I pulled it apart. And I put a couple of bolts in to hold it together, and then a couple of plates and a clamp. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work it in between these two. Once I can get that in there started, make sure that everybody's good. All right. I can tighten down the clamp and get a load on those springs. So once I can get that one end in, feel like it's in there a little bit, like right there, I could undo my clamp. I want to keep pressure on there because I don't want it to slide apart and go flying. Move back my chair. All right. Now with that little bit, keep going. And now you can see it's sliding in right now. So what I'll do now is take these bolts off. Now the reason I got extra nuts and stuff is I didn't have the right size bolts, so I just took up a little bit of space. It doesn't matter that they're a little bit too long, I just took up the space on them. Now we'll get these apart. Now they have a little bit of a lip on the plate here that'll hold that spring in. As long as you have tension on it, the spring won't come shooting out. Because there's a little bit of a lip on either side of that plate, on the bottom plate and on the top plate. Kind of positions the spring. So get all these little nuts and stuff off of there. That one doesn't want to come out very easily. There's always one. There's always that one that doesn't want to do what you want it to do. So let me go grab a screwdriver and a little bit of a pry bar, and I'll pop that bolt out. Okay. Very gentle. You don't want to pop that thing out because springs will go flying and it's not what you want to do. So what I'm looking for in the old one, we're going in like this, but we're gonna, the hole where the cross pin goes right through here on that spring pack. So I'm just trying to get all of that lined up. Okay, go back a little bit on that one. And there we have it. We want that shaft to slide in and out freely, just like that. And that's it. That is a completely rebuilt posi unit for a 12 bolt in a 68 SS 396 El Camino. So that'll be the end of this video. The next video, what I'm gonna do is get the gears set on it and get it set up into the rear end, change the bearings in the rear end. There's a couple of races that have to get popped out, and then we have to press a couple of bearings on here. So hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, like, and give me a comment. Let me know what you think. I would greatly appreciate any feedback, and thank you very much.